The Golden Vine Bistro was the kind of place where every detail gleamed with sophistication. Crystal sconces cast soft light on tables dressed in ivory linen, while the quiet hum of conversation danced under the gentle melody of a live pianist in the corner. It was a haven for the elite, a sanctuary of indulgence. Amid the sea of elegance, Cecilia Davenport commanded attention like a queen among courtiers. Her emerald green dress hugged her figure with precision, and the diamonds dangling from her ears caught every flicker of light. Cecilia wasn't just wealthy. She was accustomed to power, the kind that made people lower their gazes and cater to her whims without question. Her manicured fingers swirled the wine in her glass as she surveyed the room with a faint smirk. To her, the restaurant was just another stage where she played the lead role. But tonight, her reign would be tested. At the edge of the room, hustling between tables, was a young waitress named Grace. Her uniform, while pristine, clung to her after hours of rushing between tables. Grace was exhausted, though she wore a polite smile that masked her fatigue. She had dreams, big ones, but for now, every shift at the bistro was a step toward paying for her art school tuition. As Grace approached Cecilia's table, balancing a tray of entrees, she felt the weight of the woman's piercing gaze. Cecilia leaned back in her chair, a look of faint disdain settling on her face. "You're late," Cecilia said before Grace could even set the plates down. "I'm terribly sorry for the delay, ma'am," Grace replied, her voice steady but soft. "The kitchen's been a bit backed up." Cecilia's lips curled into a smirk. "Backed up? This is supposed to be a fine dining establishment, not a fast food joint. Honestly, how hard is it to deliver food on time?" Grace flushed but maintained her composure. "I'll do my best to ensure everything is perfect for you from here on out." "You'd better," Cecilia said, waving a hand dismissively. "Though I suppose perfect might be asking too much." Her friends at the table chuckled, their laughter sharp and cutting. Grace's hands trembled slightly as she set down the plates, but she managed a small nod before retreating toward the kitchen. As the evening wore on, Cecilia's sharp remarks continued. She criticized the temperature of the wine, the placement of the cutlery, and even Grace's posture as she served. Each comment drew laughter from her friends, but around them, the atmosphere began to shift. Other diners exchanged glances, some whispering to one another. Near the bar, a man in a tailored navy suit watched quietly. His demeanor was calm, almost detached, but his dark eyes tracked every word, every sneer, every flicker of discomfort on Grace's face. At last, Cecilia waved for the check, sighing dramatically as though the entire evening had been a trial. When Grace returned with the bill, Cecilia glanced at it, then looked up with a raised brow. "This is wrong," she said, tossing the bill onto the table. "You overcharged us for the wine. Do I need to call the manager, or can you fix this yourself?" Grace hesitated. I'll take care of it right away, ma'am." Before Grace could leave, the man in the navy suit stood and walked toward the table. His steps were unhurried, but his presence commanded attention. Cecilia noticed him approaching and straightened in her seat, her expression shifting to one of mild curiosity. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone laced with impatience. The man stopped at the table, his gaze steady and unflinching. "Yes, you can," he said evenly. "By listening for a moment." Cecilia blinked, taken aback by his tone. "Excuse me?" He turned to Grace, who stood frozen a few feet away. "Grace," he said, his voice softening. "Could you stay for a moment, please?" Grace nodded hesitantly, her wide eyes darting between him and Cecilia. The man turned back to Cecilia. "I'm Michael Hayes," he said, extending a hand that Cecilia didn't take. "Owner of the Golden Vine." The color drained from Cecilia's face. Her mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came out. Michael continued, his voice calm but firm. "I've been observing your behavior tonight, Mrs. Davenport, and while we pride ourselves on exceptional service, we also value respect for our staff and for the effort they put into making this establishment what it is." I I didn't mean, Cecilia stammered, but Michael raised a hand to stop her. Intent doesn't excuse impact, he said, his tone unyielding. Grace here has handled your comments with grace and professionalism, but your behavior tonight has been unacceptable. The surrounding diners had gone silent, their attention fixed on the confrontation. Cecilia's friends looked anywhere but at her, their discomfort palpable. Michael gestured toward the bill on the table. Your meal tonight is on the house, he said. Not as a courtesy, but because I will be donating the equivalent amount to a charity that supports young women working toward their education. Women like Grace. Grace's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. Michael turned to her with a gentle smile. Thank you for your hard work tonight, Grace. You've shown incredible strength and dignity. Take the rest of the evening off. I insist. Grace nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, she whispered. Michael's gaze returned to Cecilia, who now looked small and shaken in her seat. Money and status don't entitle anyone to treat others poorly, he said. I hope this evening has given you something to think about. Cecilia lowered her eyes, her cheeks burning with humiliation. As Michael walked Grace toward the kitchen, the room erupted into quiet applause. It wasn't loud, but it was heartfelt, a collective acknowledgement of Grace's resilience and Michael's stand for decency. Cecilia and her friends left the restaurant in silence, their earlier laughter and bravado replaced by awkward tension. Meanwhile, Grace stepped out into the cool night air, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. For the first time, she felt seen, not just as a waitress, but as a person deserving of respect. And Michael? He returned to his seat, satisfied not by the applause, but by the reminder he'd left behind. Kindness costs nothing, but its impact is priceless.